Hello and welcome to the Living Plate Teaching Kitchen, where we're changing the conversation around food and nutrition so you can meet your health goals with less stress in the kitchen. I'm Jeanne Petrucci, registered dietitian nutritionist, and I am super excited to be with my friend and colleague today, Ashley Koff. Hi, Ashley.
Hey.
Oh, you're on this side. I do that every time. Welcome to my kitchen, Ashley.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, with today's menu, I wish I was here with you so badly. This is everything I want. Yes.
It would be so nice. So next time you're in the area, you drop by and we'll just do this all over again.
Yes,
because,
perfect.
Yeah, the recipes are just going to be stunning today. So our dinner party guests would like to know a little bit about you. So would you mind sharing a little bit of your background with us?
Sure. Well, growing up, I always wanted to be Angela Bauer from Who's the Boss. So I pursued a career in advertising. And I thought, she was just so great at what she did, but also she went home. Sure, she was messy, but it was cute messy, right? So I was like, this is going to be great. But I always had, which I didn't learn until later, I always had a belly. And I thought that belly was just because I wasn't dieting perfectly or I wasn't doing things right. And I found out later it was all my parents' fault. No, I'm just kidding. But I found out that I wasn't getting in the nutrients that my digestive system actually needed to run better. And when I learned that after some really low, my rock bottom was a 7-day goat's milk cleanse, which is this whole other story. I learned that the power of better nutrition and really total nutrition, but finding nutrients in our food to heal our digestion, and then, how we can do repair work when needed with supplements. And I just became so passionate that this is what I've got to go out and help others do. So for about the last 20 years, I've been doing a lot of total nutrition education in a bunch of different places. And a couple of years ago, founded the Better Nutrition Program because, as we'll dive into in a minute, we need assessment. We need to know what we're actually getting in before we start adding things in or changing things up.
Yeah, totally agree. And what an interesting background. So how long have you been in RD?
20 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I was only Angela Bauer for about 3 years.
Okay.
But during that time, I sold a lot of sugared cereal to America and told them it was great for them. So yeah, awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, terrific. Thank you so much for sharing. If any of you have questions as we're going through the digital dinner party for myself or for Ashley, please feel free to type them in comments and we'll answer them live. So Ashley, the first thing that we're going to do is a menu reveal for our dinner party guests so that they know that what we're going to be making. If you have registered for this digital dinner party ahead of time, I already sent out a first email that has all of the recipes as well as a grocery list and a free gift from Ashley. But if you haven't pre-registered, just go back to the original announcement, and there's a little link in there. It's a bit.ly link for you to register so that we can get you all of the recipes. So don't worry, you'll get the recipes. So the first thing we're going to start with, because it is getting a little chillier, and tell our guests where you're from. Where you are right now.
Yeah, and I'm from where I live. So I'm in Columbus, Ohio.
Okay, so it's about to get pretty chilly in Ohio. New Jersey, we're going to have this kind of hot, cold thing for another couple of weeks. But we're going to be making a Mexican hot chocolate today. This could totally be served over ice, though, correct?
Absolutely. Oh, I mean, I've also done it as an ice cream. I made it into popsicles and ice cream, too.
Oh,
so, yeah.
Oh, okay. Great. So you guys are going to have lots of options with this. So the Mexican hot chocolate, and then we're going to do a lentil yogurt wrap that could also be served as a salad. We are going to move on to a seedy avocado tofu wrap. And then we're going to finish with sauteed zucchini noodles and a hemp pesto. How does that sound?
Oh, I mean, I just want to be there. This is crazy.
Right?
Yeah.
This entire conversation is going to revolve around micronutrients. And could you just share, while I get the first recipe out, could you share with our guests what is a micronutrient?
Sure.
Great.
Our body needs all these different nutrients to run better, right? And we can think about, if you think about a car or you think about your home needing different things, there are things that we need lots of and things that we need smaller amounts of. But we know that the small amounts are, if we don't have them, can be as important. And so that's really all we're talking about when it comes to micronutrients, things that we might need smaller amounts of compared to something like what we call a macronutrient, like a carbohydrate. With a micronutrient, we might be talking about about iodine, zinc, magnesium, you know, some of these minerals, vitamins and minerals, but they're essential. We have to get them in because the body uses them in a bunch of different ways to run better.
Right. And micronutrients do not contribute calories.
Well,
or do they?
They could. They themselves should not be contributing calories, but the vehicle from which you get them would be contributing calories.
Of course. Yes. So just to differentiate between macronutrients. So the macronutrients are the carbs, the proteins, and the fats. Correct? And then the micronutrients are all those vitamins and minerals that you talked about.
Yeah.
Okay, terrific. So why don't we get started with our first recipe? It is the Mexican hot chocolate. And we're going to start with 2.5 cups of non-dairy milk. And I do want you to talk about the difference between fortified milks and non-fortified and also homemade, because that's going to make a difference in the nutrition panel here. We're going to be using raw cocoa powder, which is known as cacao powder, a 1/4 cup of monk fruit sweetener, which I'm going to show to our guests, some cinnamon, nutmeg, cayenne pepper. I will tell you that my ears are still burning when we tested this recipe this morning, and I love that. So there's a good amount of cayenne pepper here, some cardamom and vanilla extract.
Amazing. I love this. And, you know, even though it's called Mexican hot chocolate, one of my favorite experiences years ago, I used to do these going to the source stories for Good Morning America. And one of my favorite stories was going to Bali and actually Jakarta and seeing all the cacao farms.
Yeah.
And with the cacao they actually would do shots of this in the morning instead of a shot of espresso. So just a thought.
So something like this, what would they mix it with? What kind of milk would they mix it with?
They would do straight up water. So they would mix all those spices, the cacao and the water, like an espresso shot. You know, my feeling is it's kind of like we have matcha in certain places, we have coffee, you know, et cetera. And the upside of getting in cacao is you get this high amount of magnesium, which is so great for the body, which we'll talk about. But also cacao has that bliss chemical, and the bliss chemical makes us feel good and happy, like an endorphin release, which I love starting my day that way. So that's a win also.
Yeah, it's great. It's a real kick. I love it. So I just added the cacao powder. You can purchase it pretty much any store now, but just look for cacao. It's spelled CACOA. AAO.
Yeah,
right, instead of cocoa powder. So cacao powder versus a cocoa powder.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to be adding, so I added the cacao powder and the spices, and now I'm going to be adding the Lakanto. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I do. I want to make a comment about cacao because it's so great for us to get in, but there's a lot of concerns these days about heavy metals and other things that can be found in chocolate. And so I do argue for organic. I buy mine in bulk from Thrive Market, like not affiliation there, but just you can find it at a lower cost. But I would look for something you're going to have frequently. And once you taste this, you're going to want to have it frequently. I would look for organic there. So monk fruit is really interesting. Monk fruit is found in the parts of the world where cacao is, right? So these different palms and fruits and things that we're learning about. And it has, instead of having fructose as a sweetener, it has a compound that tastes sweet to us. So the upside of that is you're not getting in that fructose, and it can be a really nice replacement. Now there's monk fruit extract, and there's monk fruit concentrate, and the monk fruit juice concentrate. I'm a little bit more of a fan of that juice and the juice concentrate than I am of the extract, but different options.
So how is this? So I use the golden powder. Is that okay?
I like that one. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I think that's going to be a great option. And so it's just a way to make this not have where you're not getting in the extra sweetener. Look, I have nothing. I build my added sugar budget and then I decide how I'm going to allocate it. And I love maple syrup. So if you wanted to put a little bit of maple syrup in here and just note, you know, that a teaspoon is going to be one of your 6 teaspoons in the day, depending on your health goals, then that would be fine too. But this is a fun way to do it.
Okay, terrific. And the Lakanto monk fruit sweetener does have erythritol in it. So just check with your registered dietitian if that's going to be fine. For most people, it is not a problem. For some people, it does cause digestive upset because it is a sugar alcohol. But, you know, overall, I haven't seen any issues in my practice anecdotally, and I don't have an issue with it. So
and it's a sugar alcohol that usually people do better with.
Okay, good. Good to know.
And I don't think it usually causes upset, like, but in an already irritated stomach, or like if we're working on a SIBO protocol or something like that, you're absolutely right. We should be careful about that.
With somebody like IBS, like just experiment with it first before going whole hog. But it does have a wonderful flavor. Very, no aftertaste for the Lecanto monk fruit. I really love it. Oh, we're bubbling over here. So I just wanted to show our guests this cute little tool. It's an electronic whisker. So Ashley, you said you use one of the matcha. But
and I have one of those. I actually, I used to be better about it. I used to travel with one of those little mini ones because it's a great one. You know, before they had all those balls in shaker cups, it was a great option. But yeah,
I'm just being lazy today. So this is battery powered, but you should see how frothy this is. Yes. It's amazing. So it's like, it's just put a lot of air. And it's going to make it really nice and creamy. So as I'm serving the Mexican hot chocolate, could you please talk about fortified milks versus homemade milks versus unfortified milks, and kind of how do we know the difference?
Yeah, and I'm actually doing a whole talk on plant milks at the New York and the LA Coffee Festival. So this is like a warm up for me. So I'm excited.
How do you get an invitation to that?
Oh, it's Saturday. It's Saturday. Come have coffee and tea.
That's awesome.
In New York. So, you know, the thing about plant milks is you just have to make some decisions. You know, if something doesn't have, you just need to know what you're working with. So for example, people will argue, oh, don't drink almond milk. There's no protein in there. I'm not getting my vitamin D. No, totally have the almond milk, especially if it's delicious and it's not providing anything else. Just make sure you get your protein and your vitamin D elsewhere. So this whole idea that, you know, and I use the meat argument that like we have to look at a beef burger that's 20 grams of protein and then say a plant burger has to be 20 grams of protein. This is just silliness. So let's just put that aside. So with fortification, one of the things you want to understand is that a lot of the plant milks that are on the market, some have as much as 50% more calcium than a glass of milk. And they will boldly and broadly advertise that part. Now, two things there. One, if that's going to be how you're meeting your calcium needs, that's great. But if it's causing you to exceed your calcium intake for the day or not get in a better balance of calcium and magnesium, that could be an issue. So just because you switch away from dairy doesn't mean you're actually reducing your calcium intake. So we can start there, especially with milks like sesame milk, which I saw coming on the market, you know, and some of that stuff. So that's one thing. The second thing to understand is that fortification, so we could think of like, I think the best example, and of course I shared with you all that I used to work in advertising for cereals, was the Total cereal commercial, right? And it ran through and it was like, oh, 100% of all the nutrients you need to get in the day. Right. But it didn't tell us what source. And also, does that mean you're only eating Total cereal for the day? Like, that's kind of weird. So what you want to understand with fortification is the form of the fortification may have nothing to do with the form of the food. So tofu, naturally, you know, when they make tofu, it's going to have calcium in there. It's going to have proteins, you know, these kinds of things, although they are adding some of the calcium in the base of that. But when you get that in, that might be very different than the calcium or the vitamin D or something else that's added to the plant milk. And unfortunately, what I've seen are really poor quality forms, like that I would never let somebody take in a supplement form, but that's what's actually in their plant milk. Right. So what my bias typically is to go for something that has as minimal fortification, get your nutrients in from food, and then go over to a supplement if you're needing to, you know, include something. But I'm also a realist, which is there are great, you know, and I work with a plant milk company and we add calcium, and I'm like, okay, that's great. We just want to look and see, are those good? Are they a good source of the calcium? And the most important thing is that you're checking that. So for example, for me, when I make this milk at home, right, I want it to be super creamy and delicious. And I make my own cashew milk. And so I actually get almost no calcium, and I get much more magnesium, and I get some of these other nutrients in there, right? So it's really just understanding. It's why I love Living Plate so much for dietitians, is we're able to so easily see the nutritionals of what somebody's actually taking in instead of guessing about their total nutrition.
Yes, and what Ashley is referring to is our Living Plate RX meal plan software that's free for registered dietitians and healthcare professionals to use. You click and drag and build meals and days and weeks, and you're able to take a look at the full nutrition panel, right? So really assessing somebody's calcium intake before you start recommending a calcium supplement. Mm-hmm. And what would be a danger of over supplementation for something like calcium?
Yeah. And it's one of the reasons that I created our So my first evaluation that we created at the Better Nutrition Program was the magnesium evaluation. And very quickly, I'm like, oh, we need the calcium, because I think you can see me do it. If we contract our muscle, that's calcium. And when we relax it, that's magnesium.
Okay.
And so the first danger is excess contraction. Well, what that means is we might be thinking like, I'm not contracting, but your body inside is going, oh yeah, I am. Because our stress response is built on calcium. When our body experiences stress, calcium crosses inside our cells and contracts. That's tension. And then the relaxation comes when the magnesium in there kicks it out and is like, peace out. You don't belong here. Okay. So that's how we turn off the stress response. So one of the primary issues of excess calcium is that it can create more contraction, which headaches, constipation, just not good metabolism, trouble sleeping, like all these things, right? Okay. The other issue is calcium's supposed to get to our bones, but without the help of a lot of different nutrients, it can end up as arterial plaque, or it could end up as kidney stones, neither one of which is desirable. And so more calcium is not better. That's the net. And actually, we have misstated the calcium recommendations in this country for a long time. There was like bad phone tag that happened from France where they said, hey, a woman needs about 1,000 or 1,200 milligrams. And in this country, we heard every woman should be supplementing with 1,000 or 1,200 milligrams. So we had women that were getting 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 milligrams of calcium. So we're correcting for that mistake now because we know the importance of that balance, but that helps you understand a little bit of the risks and why we need to work on it. And Reed, it is awesome to see you, one of our dear friends and a great nutrition expert. So great to see you over there as well.
Hi, Reed. Well, thank you for diving a little bit deeper into the milks. And I also my daughter for Christmas bought me the cow. Have you seen that? Yeah. Which is a great piece of equipment. It makes plant milks with the press of a button. But I do recognize when I'm using that plant milk that I am not going to be getting all of the calcium that I would if I were using the Tetra Pak. So
or vitamin D. And look, I think the main place to think about it is for families or for people who are, your homemade milks probably last 2 days, maybe they last 3 days, and so there are a lot of reasons to incorporate those as well.
Okay. Terrific. So you ready to move on to our next recipe?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. So this is the lentils with yogurt and spinach. We have spinach, basil, lentils. You can use cooked or canned. So here is my favorite brand. I don't partner with them yet, but Westbury lentils I think are amazing. The texture is really great. So just make sure that you rinse them, drain them and rinse them to get the best texture. And then we also wanted to show you one of our favorite types of lentils, black lentils. Have you ever cooked the French black lentils?
I've had them. I don't think I've cooked them.
Really? They cook very, very quickly. And they have the texture almost of caviar. So they have they're very pearly and they tend not to overcook. So yeah, really great. Get your hands on some black lentils. And then of course we have our, these are Bob's Red Mill organic green lentils. So red lentils probably wouldn't work so great in this recipe. Red lentils are usually used for dals, which are delicious, but yeah, choose either the green or the black is going to be your best bet. So we have garlic, lemon juice, some full fat Greek yogurt, and maybe we can have the conversation about full fat versus regular and Greek yogurt versus conventional, olive oil, salt and pepper, and then we're going to top it with some raw walnuts. So while I start preparing this recipe, Ashley, can you talk a little bit about legumes, which are lentils, and the micronutrient content?
Absolutely. And Leanne, you can absolutely find the canned lentils in stores. It's a great place to catch them. Thank you for asking that question. Yeah. So one of the reasons that I love that we're doing this lentil dish is that, whether we're talking about spinach and greens and things like that, I think we often forget how easy it is to get our micronutrients in from these pulses and from these legumes because so they have a balance in nature. Mother Nature kind of put into them this balance of micronutrients that our body needs. But there are a couple of caveats. Like one caveat you were showing over there, the Bob's Red Mill that's organic. One concern is as our soil has been more depleted. Oh, by the way, because we haven't been growing lentils and legumes for a long time, we weren't doing as much rotational crop. we are seeing fewer micronutrients in the soil. So I went to the Rodale Institute, probably 5 or 6 years ago, and was looking at some research that they did where they showed farmland that was soil that was farmed with chemicals and soil that was farmed organic. And the difference in the micronutrients really aligned with what we see in disease in the human body today and the scope of disease, because we're not getting in these micronutrients. So I'm a really big fan. It doesn't mean that you always have to get organic. I understand access, but if you have that option, great. But if not, rinsing them off. And then what's great about it is the legumes are going to provide you, we know, of course, they're providing us fiber, they're providing us plant proteins, but they provide this profile of micronutrients that's very similar to what you get in a multivitamin, multimineral. Really great for bone building, fantastic for blood sugar regulation, getting in nutrients that are going to help not just the insulin move things into the cells, but also how the cells are able to metabolize those nutrients. And then when it comes to adding the Greek yogurt, I personally am not a yogurt fan. It's a texture thing though, so I just point that part out. But okay. We've seen great research. So for me, I would bind this with a mustard. I do more of like the Dijon. I would do mustard and some olive oil and do it that way just to close that out. But
you could also add like mashed avocado too.
Yeah, so many options, right? Yeah, totally. But what I do love is the fats are going to help with the absorption of some of the nutrients in there. I love that she's chosen a full fat yogurt because the fat-free stuff just shouldn't be available. When you remove the fat, we're just changing the whole profile. And right. It's such a, let's the 80s are calling with nutrition recommendations. Like, let's just not go there. Right. And I think the key thing to think about on that part, as you look at the Greek versus not is, so Greek yogurt goes through a process where it's concentrating the protein. So you're going to have a higher protein intake there. But remember, you're getting plant proteins from the beans. So if you needed to avoid, or you were choosing to avoid the dairy, I might throw some additional hemp seeds on there for a little bit more plant protein. Mm-hmm. Or I promise you're meeting your protein needs. So that's a whole other conversation. But I think that it's great. The one thing that we do want to think about with Greek versus not is you are getting, you want to think about the texture is just also going to be a little bit different. Right. And so if you were to change and not use it, that's great. But yeah, I love organic Greek yogurt. I think full fat's going to be a great choice. Now, same message though, from a plant-based standpoint. If you choose a plant-based yogurt, first of all, look at the ingredients, because some of them are very processed, but others are using nuts and seeds and they're doing a great job. And they might not hit the nutritional profiles that are exactly the same with the Greek yogurt, but who cares? Because, say you're only getting 8 grams, but then you're getting the rest of the 8 grams with your nuts, like you're doing awesome. So those look amazing. Wow.
Look at this.
Yeah.
So I took this lentil mixture and I put it on top of arugula. So we're getting some extra cruciferous vegetables there. And then we just sliced the cucumber on an angle to get more surface area. So that's a great trick. Yeah. Make like these cucumber chips and then just top the lentils. So that could be a great appetizer, or it's going to be my lunch. So,
and I would say especially if you're thinking about going into the holidays. So we're very focused right now. I'm running a digestive tune-up this month. But I know as we kind of go into January, also we think about detoxing, and everything that's in the foods that we were just showing you, including the cacao, the hot chocolate, that's got the cacao, are actually helping to support your body's detoxification and digestive system. So, if somebody's promoting something that looks like the food has to be nasty, like fiber crackers, just let somebody else do that one, because this is exactly what you should be doing for better health, the better skin, better waistline, whatever your goals are on that part.
Yeah. So we're like just chatting and cooking up here, and I haven't even started on our agenda yet. Yeah. So let's take a look at one of the first items that we wanted to make sure that we cover while we're cooking is assessment.
Yes.
So I think if you could just review that a little bit with our guests about how important it is to understand and assess what your current, because I want to talk about the blood tests too. Here. Okay.
Yeah. So, I think the best analogy that I've come up with that's like of the modern era, if you will, is you have to do one thing before Lyft or Uber can come pick you up. And that is, you have to turn on your location settings. If they don't know where you are, they can't map a route. They can't decide if they can come pick you up. You can't figure out what the better route is, et cetera, et cetera. And what I find in medicine and in nutrition and in health is a lot of us know very specifically what our goals are, but we haven't turned on those location settings. We don't know where we are today. And even practitioners are doing their best with a lot of different tools. So it just came up like lab tests, you know, okay, let me do a micronutrient testing, which I love. If somebody's doing that, they're getting really good information, but they're getting information just about what's in your blood or potentially what's in your urine, with, you know, what's coming out that way. And what we know is we really need to understand your total nutrition, what's going in and on your body most often, to help us understand if we're closer to meeting your body's current needs. And then we can also look at, are there things that are going on that may be increasing your needs, or why maybe if you're meeting your needs, we're not seeing the outcomes. Maybe something is working in conflict, like maybe you're taking in too much calcium, even though you're getting in enough magnesium. So when it comes to doing something like you know, a lab test for micronutrients, which I think is wonderful, I look even a step back. And this is something that any of you at home can do, whether you're a practitioner or whether you're an individual, or whether you're like me, you're a practitioner and you're also a patient yourself. And that is, you should be assessing your total nutrition intake, because today we take in nutrients in so many different forms. Like last night, I took in a lot of magnesium by way of a bath. So I need to understand that the bath, or now we have like CBD oil, or maybe I'm putting like gamma-linolenic fatty acid on my skin through my skincare. And we need to understand that, along with supplements, along with fortified nutrients that we were talking about in our food, as well as our foods and beverage. And I just found there wasn't an easy way to do that. So that's when I created my company, and we created those tools for you.
Which the tools are amazing. And then, and also understanding kind of stage of life, right? Mm-hmm. So when you talk about increased micronutrient needs and macronutrient needs, something like pregnancy, right? And the needs of a 21-year-old athlete, right, are going to be different than a 55-year-old postmenopausal woman, right?
Right. So, but interestingly on that part, a 21-year-old athlete and a 55-year-old postmenopausal athlete may have a lot more in common than we realize, right? So there's also that part. And I love that you brought up pregnancy. We often focus a lot on making sure we get the right nutrients going into pregnancy, because we're very focused on the baby doing well. But the issue is that mom doesn't do well. And that's because the baby, all of us, we robbed our mothers of their nutrient supply. And especially for anyone that goes on to have a second child or a third child, that replenishment of those nutrients. So I actually focus so much on postnatal, and I talk about like the inner body after baby, as obviously people are focused on the body, the external side of things, but you've got to replenish those nutrients, because the diseases associated with micronutrient deficiency that come on in your 50s, 60s, 70s, hopefully, like if they're delayed and they're coming on at that point, or we can prevent them, even more importantly, they come on because we didn't replenish a lot of those nutrients.
Oh, so important. I'm really glad that you brought all that up. Really great. So we're going to move on to the next recipe, which is our seedy avocado tofu wrap. This recipe has half of any recipe that calls for half of an avocado, or even a full avocado, even better, is good with me. So avocado.
I've introduced you to my friend Tess. I just have to say right now, you and the blender girl are like a kindred spirit. I had her, she was making a salad, and I was like, oh, just wrap that up. And she's like, you never put half an avocado away.
Just eat it. Just get it in the recipe. I love that. We're actually, so on that note, I don't want to miss the opportunity to drop a link in for Tess's bread recipes. So for the previous recipe and for this recipe, you could absolutely put it over a bread. And our mutual friend that we're talking about is Tess Masters. She's also known as the Blender Girl. And we're going to drop a link in right now into the comments for breads. So Tess has a whole collection of public recipes. You just follow the link and you've got all kinds of options. I adore the onion and herb soka that she has. And I know that you had recommended we use the soka with this recipe as well.
Yeah.
So
look, soka is a great, it's a great tangent from the last one to this one, because I found that that's a really easy way to have your bread and get your micronutrients in too. And we forget about the power of those legumes and being able to do that. So that one's awesome.
So if for our dinner party guests who may not know what soka is a very, when I say very simple, it doesn't get simpler than this. It's a simple flatbread made with chickpea flour. And almost always it's the chickpea flour plus boiling water and then seasonings. And that's it. And you bake it. Do you put anything else in your soka, Ashley?
So what I do is I leave it in a shaker cup in my refrigerator. And I'm just going to now admit that there's a reason that I'm talking about people like Tess and Jeanne, and I'm here not cooking. And that's because my cooking style is, I've gotten permission to say this. I don't work with IKEA, but I am totally an IKEA style. I am just some assembly required. So anything that I can assemble versus like really have to like get in most of the time.
Okay.
And so I keep that in the soka mix in the fridge, and then I upgrade or downgrade it depending on what I'm doing. Like I might mix it with egg. I've mixed it with banana before. I've mixed it with banana and cacao and made something that way. So lots of different ways to play with it.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. All right. So everybody just follow that link that we're going to drop in, and you'll have the recipe. Okay. So we're going to start with our tofu. And you did talk a little bit about that, but I'd like you to talk a little bit more about, and that brings us to the next item on our agenda, which is food first. Because what a lot of people don't recognize is that tofu is not only rich in protein, but also calcium. Right?
And your essential fatty acids. So the biggest mistake people ever make with soy is going fat-free, because you're like, that was just such a disaster. And it's like you're getting in all these. So tofu, like hemp seeds, are like the wild salmon of the plant kingdom, right? You're getting in everything that you need there. And here you're getting in calcium as if you were eating like the bones of sardines, which a lot of people don't want to do. But this is a great way to do that. And, you know, my preference again is organic. And for some people, if there's a soy, you know, if you're avoiding soy, you can easily do beans here. You can do hemp seeds, like lots of other options on that part. But what we love seeing is this is just such an easy way to help meet your calcium needs. And again, for a lot of us, because 70% of Americans, women, are not meeting their magnesium RDA, and I really think it's even a little bit too low from what we know about.
No wonder we're not sleeping.
Yes, exactly. And so, like, I think we're going to realize that, like, the stress impact of like daily living, including, oh, by the way, how many of us have now decided to engage in, you know, more high intensity training and fitness, which puts stress on the body that we need to turn off and relax our muscles.
Right.
So the reason I say that is my preference most of the time is to have you meet your nutrients needs like calcium from food. And then I just can play around with your magnesium intake if I have to supplement, so that I can find out a little bit, you know, so I can figure that part out for you so that the body is getting that relaxation. The other reason is I like, if we are using a supplement of magnesium, I'll usually have you use it before bed, and I'll have you do it just by itself. Whereas a lot of foods in nature, some of the ones we've been showing you, like the legumes and the greens, they provide both calcium and magnesium together. That's because Mother Nature wanted us to get it together, right? Like on that part. So, you know, it's there's a hint that we need those to be getting those in together.
And calcium is very well regulated in the body, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, yes and no. So calcium, I like to say, is a little bit like Johnny when you go to the museum and the whole class, you know, say it's 6th grade class and everybody's like, hey, where's Johnny? Like Johnny went off like somewhere else. So you have to like bring Johnny back. And the friend is like, has anyone seen Johnny again? You know, that kind of thing. So the idea is it is very well regulated how it's used, but it can, as we said, it can go off in other places and not get to the bone and not get where it's supposed to be if your other micronutrients, so things like vitamin K and boron and magnesium and vitamin D and as well as your gut health is going to be really dependent on how well your body is absorbing calcium that you take in.
Okay. Actually, I think that brings us to our next item on our agenda, which is the really digestion and absorption. Why do we need to pay attention to that when we're talking about micronutrients and basic nourishment?
Yeah, because you are not what you eat. Like this is that whole thing. And we can see all this beautiful food that Jeannie's preparing. And it don't mean a thing if your digestion inside is not working properly. And it's about digestion and absorption. And our mucosal layer, so we have skin that goes all throughout our digestive tract, and it's just like the skin on the outside of our body. But because we see the skin on the outside of our body, we're very clear when we get like, oh, I've got a blemish, or oh, there's a tear, or, you know, oh, I just feel like my skin is changing. And we don't see that as much, but inside, the lining of the skin is responsible for nutrient absorption, you know, as well as to protect us, to make sure things don't go in and out that shouldn't go in either direction.
Right.
And so it's absolutely essential, foundational to anything. Like, you cannot have achieve any better health goal if you don't have healthy digestion. And so giving your body the nutrients that it needs to tune up, to replenish, to restore that digestion is going to be a critical first step. One of the other things, and I'll go back to why I love the cacao, the hot chocolate, kind of bringing it full circle to our first beverage, is when digestion is not working as well, the blender or the fun little mixer that she was using may do some of the work for us, because liquid nutrition gets very easily absorbed. So one of the reasons I love that cacao, say like in the evening or first thing in the morning, because a lot of times our stomach is maybe feeling a little more sensitive, or, you know, we're dealing with that in the morning, those are going to be times for great absorption, nutrient absorption, making it really easy at that point.
Okay. So does that mean we should juice, or we should drink smoothies, or?
So I'm not a big, I'll leave the juicing versus smooth. I have a blog on it. I've asked people, like, I'm a blender person.
Okay.
It's not just because we love the blender girl, but the main thing is I'm like, why lose out on nutrients in food? So I put everything into the blender. But the act of blending it, the act of having all of that, or you could also make a congee, right? Like, so you could slow cook and have something fall apart there and be smoother. That's going to be just really great for bringing in those nutrients. And also getting in through the food. You know, we've been talking about magnesium and calcium, but also in showing that avocado, you're also, glutamine is one of my favorite, what we call conditionally essential amino acids.
Yes.
And it's really critical for repairing the digestive tract lining. We're giving a lot of attention to collagen these days, and I think we're missing that actually this conditional amino acid is so important. Whereas collagen is made up of some others that the body may be able to produce, and we just need to maybe help it along sometimes.
But helping it along, you mean supplementing with L-glutamine?
Sorry, for helping along with the collagen, I want to make sure we get in nutrients, but for the glutamine, we may want to supplement glutamine, or just make sure we go for that avocado, right?
Yeah, there we go. That's a great, so the food first.
Yeah.
So here are our seedy avocado tofu wraps. We've used romaine. I actually had wanted to wrap them in collards for their extra micronutrient density, but we couldn't find them. So this is a very flexible recipe. I just wanted to show our dinner party guests what I had used here. I think you can see that. Yeah. It's a potato masher. So don't reserve your potato masher for Thanksgiving dinner. You know, bring it out and mash your avocados, mash your tofu. It just makes life really simple. So that's our wrap. And now we're going to move on to our next recipe, which is the hemp pesto, which I'm super excited about. Because I don't think I've ever met anybody who doesn't like pesto, right? Mm-hmm. And have you had a frost yet in Ohio, or do you still have basil?
No, I still have basil, and the rest of my plants are outside, and I'd like to just negotiate, because I don't have time for 2 weekends. So I'd like the third weekend to be really when that occurs. Yeah.
Okay. So if you haven't gotten the frost yet, get that basil in the house, make this pesto. This pesto freezes really well, correct?
Yes, absolutely. So it freezes, and it just does great in the refrigerator. So yeah, but super easy. You could even put it into ice cube trays, so you have portions of it and do it that way. Super easy. Yep.
So the first thing I'm going to do, and I did include this in the recipe collection, just some simple zucchini noodles. Prior to the broadcast, Ashley, you were sharing with me that you found frozen zucchini noodles, which I haven't found yet. Can you tell me?
I had seen them at like Whole Foods, but I was just over at Aldi, and I'm like, oh wait, this is so awesome. Like, this is no longer feeling like you either have to have a spiralizer or shop at Whole Foods. And I think the only thing you want to be clear about is there's just a very big difference in texture between what Jeannie's done here with ones that are drier and a little bit harder versus the ones that you would get from the frozen. And the biggest mistake you can make is to try to just start sauteing the frozen ones, because you'll get just a bowl of water. And now, if that's intended and you want something to be more soupy, great. But what I recommend is actually taking the zucchini noodles out of the freezer and putting them in a bowl in your refrigerator and defrosting them, and then straining them, and then keep that zucchini water. Use that zucchini water for something, for sure.
What would you use it for?
Well,
you could smoothie, or
throw it into your morning. Yeah, if you're doing a green juice smoothie, you could mix it with some avocado and you're making a dressing. You've got, just easy things. Yeah.
So just a side note about zucchini. One of my favorite things to do with zucchini, again, especially this time of year, because it's like if I plant, this year I planted 2 zucchini plants because every year I like curse it just takes over the garden, right? So, but I still got a lot of zucchini, and you know, you can only eat so much cooked zucchini. I just cube it and freeze it, and I use it in my smoothies instead of ice cubes. So if you think, before you say, ooh, that's gross, think about what zucchini tastes like. It doesn't really taste like anything. So by taking the frozen raw zucchini and putting it into your smoothie, you're adding the creaminess, you're getting those micronutrients. One of the micronutrients I was actually really surprised to see when I looked at the analysis was magnesium in zucchini, right?
Yeah, and you get some silica. And of course, it's going to depend on its, so it's great for hair, skin, and nails. It's great for digestion. I'm also going to point out, I said I would do this, like, so in my Some Assembly Required, I never make the homemade noodles. I might buy them, but what I do is I just take thick slices of the zucchini and I'll pan fry that, you know, and just do it like that. And I make it more, or I'll eat it raw and do it as a sandwich with the hemp pesto on it.
Yeah, you did mention that. And you could also slice it and just roast it in the oven too. Right. And so this pesto you could have pretty much on any vehicle. Today we're just choosing the zucchini noodles. So if you are doing fresh zucchini noodles, or even the ones that you buy in the store, go ahead and salt them first and actually make them sweat. So what Ashley was talking about, if you buy the frozen, you should defrost them and drain them. But you can actually make the zucchini noodles sweat by just adding a little bit of salt, capture the liquid, like Ashley said, and then pat dry your noodles and saute them, which is what we're doing now. So the recipe for the hemp pesto, can I review that now? Is that okay? Great. So 2 cups of basil, 2 tablespoons of hemp seeds, 2 tablespoons of cashews soaked, 1 clove of garlic, half of a lemon juiced and zested, salt, you could do pepper too if you wanted to, and some olive oil. We're basically just going to be taking all of these ingredients, except for the olive oil, adding them to our Cuisinart, which is to my left. I'm not sure our guests can see that. And we're just going to process it. Really simple. Can you share with our guests why the hemp and why you soak your cashews?
Sure. So, and I also have made this plenty of times. Like, this is such an easy way to make it for however somebody needs it. So it's super easy to ditch the cashews and go with just straight hemp seeds, or to use hemp seed oil and hemp seeds, like lots of different ways that we can do this. So one of the reasons, this is a funny story. It's funny that Tess keeps coming up, but I used to just soak the cashews and then use them. And she was mortified because I wasn't straining the water and then washing them. So it's a lot like, think about like your canned nuts. Yes. But I'm soaking them to, one, it makes them softer, makes them blend really easily. So that's how I do with the milk, but also just to get out some of the, what we'll call the anti-nutrients that may make some of the absorption a little bit more challenging of the other nutrients. So that can be great. So the way that I soak mine is I just soak them in a mason jar. I put a little bit of sea salt, or sometimes I put apple cider vinegar. Then I strain it, and then I wash them off, and then I put them back with either leave them that way, or I put them with water if I'm going to puree it into the milk. And hemp seeds, I think I started to say it before, they are the wild salmon of the plant kingdom. They are and they're more specifically the wild salmon even than the tofu, because wild salmon and hemp seeds have this incredible omega-6 fatty acid that's great for hair, skin, and nails for anyone who happens to be aging or who is trying to
repeat that for anybody who happens to be aging. That's all of us, right?
I know. There you go. You got that. And then also, like, on a hormonal health standpoint, really helpful. So one of the things I learned early on in my career, so we're going, back about 20 years ago, was at that time, it was really popular to supplement for women with borage seed oil or borage oil. And we were finding, and I remember Dr. Weil at the time was saying that might not be the best source. And so we switched over to evening primrose oil, but it was always being recommended as something to take, and especially take if you have hot flashes or dryness, like any. And I was like, gosh, when I found out it was in wild salmon, I got so excited because I was like, oh, I'd rather, again, food first.
Right.
It's in hemp seeds and in hemp seed oil. So I actually think of this as like a therapeutic tool that you can be using. And it's really an upgrade. If you think about, not that there's anything wrong with regular pesto, but if you're not getting nutrients from, say the Parmesan that's like going to be helpful for your skin or nurturing, this is going to be helpful on that part. And then the final piece is this makes it pretty protein rich. So this is, again, like just helps us to get in more of those proteins and that diversity of protein. Hemp seeds, like tofu, are considered a complete protein. They have all the different essential amino acids. So it's a great way to be able to get that in.
So super, super nutrient dense.
Super nutrient dense.
So just some minor tweaks on, Nona's favorite pesto recipe, and you're really ratcheting it up.
Yes. Right. But if your grandmother makes pesto for you, don't tell her this one. Just enjoy hers, especially at the holidays, made with love. Yeah. But I actually one year I like Martha Stewarted myself. Like I couldn't even believe it. But I made this and made it in mason jars, and I put because I had a hemp yarn, and I put it around that, and I did that as holiday presents, and that was really fun.
Oh, how lovely! You could actually buy like the mini like wet jar. Actually, I think I have one here. This would be super cute, like, yes, right?
Exactly.
Cute. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to process this. Listen to me, my Jersey accent. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm going to process this.
Yes.
And while it's running, I'm going to be adding in our very high quality olive oil.
Great.
That just helps emulsify it. And then I'm going to take the top off. And again, I'm not so can you see this, what I'm doing, Ashley, or not really?
No. And I will tell people, I feel the way about basil that Jeanne feels about avocado. So to me, there's like no such thing as enough basil in pesto. So feel free to load that one up.
Okay, so you know what I would also add to this, just for another variation, I would add some spinach. Right? You could also add some arugula. You could use some walnuts. So this is a very, very flexible recipe. Yes,
absolutely. I think I actually did it with walnuts once as like a published recipe, because then it's just like next level on your omegas,
Yes. So. And so would you, so we used raw hemp seeds. So if you were going to use walnuts or pine nuts, would you roast them ahead of time, or would you prefer to use them raw? And why?
I think the only reason to roast them would be a flavor thing. Or if you have a particular, like, let's say you just have roasted and you're like, oh, I really want to make this, by all means, go that route. Okay. But I think that there's no nutritional win to doing that if we're talking about it from a nutrition standpoint.
Okay.
And I think the raw, yes, you can soak nuts and seeds. It really depends a bit also on your digestion and what you're following on that part. But I don't think that there's any reason that you need to do something like that ahead of time.
Okay. Yeah. So raw, if you're going to purchase, and you should have a pantry full of nuts and seeds, purchase raw. And if you decide that you want to roast them, you can lightly toast them. Is that
exactly? Okay. And I purchased mine. So mine are not in my pantry. Mine are all in my freezer. And I'm really big on finding bargains. So I do the organic nuts and seeds, and I'll look, like, sometimes, most of the time I get them from Thrive Market, and I purchase them and then store them in the freezer. I wish my freezer was inverted with my refrigerator and I had the amount of size of that one.
Yeah.
But I think that that's one of the things you want to avoid, buying things from the bins even at a health food store, because they've just been exposed to a lot of light and potentially oxygen with it opening and closing. And who knows how long they've sat there. And so that would actually be less helpful. Oh my gosh, that looks so good.
Yeah, the smell is it's really intense. Yeah. I love it. So I sauteed the zucchini noodles, and you saw that took literally like 3 minutes, and I just turned it off. I do recommend that you saute the zucchini noodles just before you're about to serve them. Otherwise, they continue to release their liquid, and it can get a little soupy. And we just stirred in the pesto. So there we go.
And I have a friend that we were working on it with her for her digestion, and she's following more of a raw food plan. And so we didn't saute the zucchini noodles. We just took some lemon juice, and we just sort of did more of like a massaging the way you would do with that. And you can do it that way. So if somebody wants to be a little more raw, they can do it that way.
Why not? Yeah. Right? Like a little cooked, a little raw. Yes, all good. Not one is better than the other, though. Correct?
Right, exactly.
So, but everything is very green today. I'm just noticing that we have a lot of green. So, feel free to add some fresh chopped red pepper to brighten things up, or use some tomatoes that are, now at the end of their life in your garden. So I
like to put chili flakes even on top of the pesto, because I'm just like, I like
that's a really good idea. I have chili flakes. Top right here. Oh, okay.
And I think the other thing that what we're seeing here is there's, again, no question in nature. You know, instead of spending a lot of money on an alkaline water, these foods are all alkaline forming, and they allow you to offset that with, you know, your, you know, if you might have a glass of wine or you're going to have some sweets or things like that. But that's really when we start to look at what's better for your digestion and your overall health. It is great to see a lot of green.
Yeah, it's amazing. So just to review, we have our Mexican hot chocolate, which is just creamy and delicious. I'm going to take this now and pour it over ice now that it's cooled down. We have the spinach and lentil, it's like a mash here or a salad over arugula, but then we've also done it on some cucumber chips, which is going to be terrific. We topped it with some walnuts for added nutrient density. And then we have the tofu avocado wraps with seeds. We called it a seedy avocado wrap on top. That looks really satisfying. And we have our zucchini noodles. So, you know, part of eating all of this plant matter is the fiber. Do you want to just talk a second about why that's important to digestion and micronutrient absorption, just kind of all over better nutrition?
Yeah, and it's one of the things too that we want to focus on with fiber. I think we know a lot about fiber and we know that we need it. And it's like one of those, like, we know we need better sleep and we don't necessarily get it. But the fiber, we also want to get it in and space it out throughout the day. And fiber is one of those things that can interfere with the absorption of nutrients. So like in a fortified, with a fortified food product or a supplement product. And so again, it's a great way to get it in through food, because food kind of figures out how those nutrients and the fiber work together. Okay. But I really love like seeing the diversity of fiber that we're getting in. Of course, there's resistant starch and there's other, you know, components. But, you know, your avocado, like all of these things, which are going to help scrape at the sides and help tune up that mucosa layer, you know, that we were talking about.
Like shirt up for digestion and absorption.
Yeah, right? Eliminate the toxins. And we were talking a moment before, I was saying about tuning up digestion. I actually do that on a quarterly basis with my clients. It's something I started myself when I realized that a goat's milk cleanse was not going to be the answer, and learned how effective this is. And we're doing it right now through our group, because there's no better time to do that than actually before the holidays. Because
I agree. This is a great segue. I'm actually going to pull up our resource roundup because
great. Okay, perfect.
I want to share with everybody. It's important. We do have a mix, just so you know, Ashley, we have a mix of consumers and clients watching, but as well, we do have healthcare professionals watching. So if you could speak about your digestive tune-up and what is available to everybody, that would be amazing.
Sure.
Okay.
And hi, Regina. So glad that you got to see the recipes. Regina, just a badass grandma down there, down south, right? She's doing it. She's awesome. So she's doing our digestive tune-up. So whether you're a practitioner or a non-practitioner, but I always say, even if you are a practitioner, we have digestive systems too. Really important to tune up our digestive system. And so starting on October 16th, we'll be running a 30-day digestive tune-up. And what that begins with is the digestive evaluation. Remember, that's like turning on your location settings. And that's one of our most popular tools, super important tool for patients and practitioners to see where your digestion is. And I believe this is the better first step for you, no matter what your health goals are. But we're also closing out a decade, and I wanted to make sure that everybody is closing out the decade feeling better. And you might say, yeah, but the holidays are going to hit. But listen, there was even somebody recently posted that when you improve your gut health, you improve your body's glycemic response. So if you know sugar is going to happen, why not tune up your digestion now to make sure that the body is, you know, going to respond to it better? We all know what it can feel like, you know, arriving into January like a hot mess. So we're going to try to prevent that. And so the digestive tune-up is myself and other experts. And if you are an expert, you're welcome to join. You're welcome to bring clients in. This is an opportunity for you to coach them through the digestive tune-up. We'd love your contribution. If you have things, you know, recipes you want to add, or other things, if you want to share meal plans, hint, hint, any of that stuff. And if you are an individual who's just saying, yes, sign me up, or how can I sign my husband up? You can just go to the link, and Jeannie's got a 20% off code so that you're able to join us. What you do is you purchase the tools. We're going to be using all of those tools in the tune-up. There's no additional cost. You're going to be buying your own groceries. We're not providing food. But what we're going to go through is what you do, how to tune up your digestion in your current life. So this isn't like stop doing everything else and just focus on tuning up your digestion. So if you're traveling or you're busy, you know, you got stuff going on, we're going to still tune up digestion during that time period to help you launch into the holidays healthier.
I love it. And we will drop a link in for the consumers and the clients, and then also for the healthcare professionals. If you have any questions, you know, what it looks like in your practice, please reach out to Ashley. Where can consumers and dietitians reach out to you, Ashley?
Sure. Anyone can reach me. First of all, I'm all over social media, but you can always reach me, Ashley, at thebetternutritionprogram.com. And if you just want to jump in, you can also text digest123 to 44222, and that'll get you right over to the tools for the tune up, and we'll get you going.
Amazing. Did you mention your website?
I don't think I did, but I said thebetternutritionprogram.com, and you'll find me there. Yeah, if I can be helpful for you on your journey, please let me know. I love these dinner parties. I love watching my friends cook so artfully and have it look so good. And I know that it's going to taste so good. And Jeanne, I'm excited to see you. We'll both be at Fancy, so I'm excited to see you at the end of this month. If you're a dietitian, please let us know, because we'll both be hanging out in the Philly area doing the Fancy thing.
Yeah. I look forward to seeing everybody. So, Ashley, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend with our dinner party guests and with me in my kitchen. And I look forward to seeing you in Fancy. For those of you who want to reach out to me, or if you're interested in using our meal plans to have access to these recipes and others, you can reach out to me through the contact form at livingplate.org. We'll see you next time, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care. Bye, Ashley. Have a great weekend.
Bye. You